a magic system that's based on biology, and that's super science fantasy. So I was like, oh my gosh, I want to write something like that. But I obviously don't know anything about geology, but I do know a little bit about medicine. I was an EMT at the time. So I was like, okay, I'll just write something in that realm of like really hard science fantasy, but with medicine instead. And at that time, I was also dealing with things like feeling just like a bit of isolation from the pandemic, but also because my grandmother was going through dementia, and she was the one who raised me. So I was just feeling a lot of emotions about feeling disconnected from my culture because she no longer spoke Vietnamese to me or no longer cooked any dishes that I was familiar with. So eventually all those feelings got put off onto this main character, and I made her deal with them instead. And from there, yeah, I guess I wrote it really quickly because it was something that was just came out of me. And I was very fortunate to sign with my agent, Ramona Pena from Bookends Literary. And we went on sub to my editor, Amelia Sowersby, who is an amazing editor. She's watching. And yeah, I was bought later that same month. So yeah, it was a real whirlwind, but I was really blessed to have some amazing people working on my team. And they are really the ones that turned it into a reality.
That's amazing. I always say that writing is free therapy, but publishing also makes you need therapy.
Yeah, very accurate.
So hearing about a writer's inspiration, it fascinates me because it's different for each writer, for each book. You mentioned some of the inspirations behind Last Bloodcarver. Do you want to share anything more, like what maybe like initial, I would say one of the initial scenes is very, very vivid to me. Were there any scenes like that or like other places where you drew inspiration for the story?
Okay, so definitely one of the scenes that didn't change much was the point at the very middle, which means nothing to anyone who's ever but the scene where she has to make this watershed decision about who to trust and who to align herself with was one of the first things that came to mind. As I was grappling with my own sense of being very, I consider myself very American, but also being, coming from a Vietnamese background. That was one of the first scenes. But also the scene where she really reconnects with her culture when she's able to read books that were meant for her and written by people like her. That scene was inspired by a moment I had when I was watching, what is it? It's really important to me, I swear. Disney's Ride the Last Dragon, the trailer for that, it was like, it's not really Vietnamese, but it's Southeast Asian second fantasy, and I had never really experienced that in like a big blockbuster Disney movie before. And so I was watching that trailer, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like, she kind of looks like my mom. And it's like, so yeah, that moment for me was just really something that inspired a particular scene for those who know.
Inspiration, I think, and also representation in media is so huge. So now the Last Bloodcarver is added to that. Teen readers will find themselves in this stuff too. So you brought a lot of visual details into the medical aspects of the Last Bloodcarver. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was real, and I felt like you were almost like had surgery experience to a certain extent. Were you actually at the surgical table, or did you do additional research for the story? How did that happen?
I guess, yeah, I had shadowed in like high school and college surgeries and whatnot. I've always been drawn to the image of like surgery, so that's why our cover, when working with my designer and the artist, I wanted like a split open chest. So while I guess a lot of it did just come naturally out of being a pre-med, but one of the things that I really drew from was learning to be an EMT. When I was learning all about physiology and putting in chest tubes and whatnot, I feel like I didn't necessarily imagine it as kind of a magic because it made it more interesting to me. So I guess this was just going in the reverse direction. Instead of learning the physiology and trying to translate it, it was more having the magic and trying to translate it to physiology. But yeah, I think one of the great things about writing purely what you know is that you rarely have to do research outside of this, Google search images.
And Google search is still one of the best places for
Yeah.
research, even if you don't
I
know. So on to some fun questions. What was a fun part about writing the book?
All of the medical things I thought were really fun. I really like puzzling out a good medical illness to put in a scene that not only is scientifically accurate but also symbologically relevant to the moment. Like the first scene is her healing a heart injury, so and then at the end she kind of
Spoilers.
But so I feel like finding all the right injuries for things, and not only in this book but in book 2 when I was writing it, and coming up with a really fun way to heal it, where you're not working from the outside in as in surgery, but you're working from the inside out. Those were really fun, and they kind of got me going, and kept me going through writing this whole book.
And so we talked about fun things. What was the most difficult part?
I think probably I speak for most authors when I just say the word count is really difficult. Because you only get like 70 to 90K words in YA, and I think this one goes to, I actually don't know. 96? 90, oh, okay. Yeah, this one goes to 96K, which is a little on the long side, but my editor let me do it. But just being able to fit in so many things that I wanted to fit in only 96K words was difficult. And then choosing what to sacrifice, I think, was equally difficult because you can't fit everything. But you gotta cut some things.
Well, that's good for the paperback edition because I'm going to add it in. Do you need scenes, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And sometimes I also Google my own word counts. There you go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I check on Google, so if you ever need in the future.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Google does everything. All right, so what is a typical writing day for you? And I understand you're very busy. So within everything you have going on, like when do you write? Like how does that even happen?
That's me think. On a typical day, I wake up at like whenever my schedule lets me wake up, as late as possible. I wake up like 30 minutes before I go to class. And then when I get back in class, I do my work. And then I'd say I write like 10 to 1 o'clock every night, if possible. I like preload on a lot of Arizona green tea, and then I just write for like 2 to 3 hours every night, and then I pass out, and then I rinse and repeat. So, I don't know. I write when I can. I also write in class. So.
Hopefully your teachers aren't watching this.
Oh yeah, no, they're very good.
Do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
Let me think. I feel like I'm a really bad person to give advice. Well, I'll just say I never thought I could write or pursue my dream of writing and pursue my dream of becoming a doctor. Fingers crossed that I pass med school. But I didn't realize that those two things could really work together. I think I was, for a long time in college and high school at least, I thought of those as separate entities. Either you're an artist or you're a scientist, especially in college when they make you choose your pathway. But since leaving college and since entering med school, I've seen that a lot of times humanities and the sciences are necessarily interconnected. So to aspiring authors who are afraid they might have to give up their passion for something that is more stable, I would say don't write it off just yet. You never know, you might get lucky. But it does take a lot of luck. So.
And no spoilers, but what is next for you, like book release wise, that you can share?
I can share that book 2 is coming. I can't share the cover title or anything. I don't know.
It's on reading.
But I can share book 2 is coming. As for after that, I don't know. But I want to keep writing and I want to keep selling. And right now, since I'm back in school, dark academia is a genre that's really near and dear to my heart. So maybe expect some of that, or maybe not. Depends on my editor. So I can't. Yeah, expect book 2. That's for sure.
Wonderful. So thank you for answering all the questions. I'm going to open it up to the audience to ask some questions. Not just me. You do? Yeah. Questions? No?
Who's your favorite character?
So let me repeat that for the live stream. Who's your favorite character and why?
Obviously, I love my main character because you spend so much time in her head and you have to fall in love with her or else the book gets really boring really quickly. But beside her, I really like one of the secondary characters, Trin, who develops a sibling-like relationship with her. I would consider that the most meaningful relationship in the book, um, even including the love interest. I think their sibling relationship is more meaningful, and I personally have 3 brothers myself, so I always try to add that kind of sibling relationship in anything I write.
Okay, while the audience warms up and thinks of their questions, I have another one for you. So I love mysteries, and I love how this was had a mystery woven throughout it. How do you plot that? Just asking for myself, pretty much. How do you plot that? Did it just was it a spark of inspiration? Do you have to adjust it? How did that work for you?
Personally, I forgot where I got these. Other famous authors. These are not mine. But I have 2 rules for writing mysteries, and one of them is to answer questions really quickly by asking more questions. So that's one thing that I try to do a lot is reveal things, but never let that lie. And then my second rule, actually this one might be is I like to answer everything at the midpoint. So I like to solve the mystery at the midpoint, but then to give it a twist. So that's, I don't know, maybe that's formulaic, but that's how all the books are written. So that's how I like to write mysteries.
Taking notes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So I really love when I read the version of this, the sort of silk things in it and the larger world building details. And I was curious what sort of went into that and why you chose that.
So just repeating the question. So the question is about the world building, how you did it. Give us all your tips, I guess, for world building too.
So the silkbook element itself came about because first of all, I wanted the world to be a metaphor for the American dream because I felt that was very relevant to the story and the struggle. So you may see references to that. But I feel like the embodiment of the American dream is kind of the Industrial Revolution. For some reason, to me, that feels that way because it's just this technological boom, and anyone can work, even children could work. It was crazy. So I liked that aspect, but I wanted to make it more specific to fantasy and medicine for one. So I tweaked it. I was like, okay, instead of Industrial Revolution, I'll do the Medical Revolution, which is kind of in a similar period. And then I was like, fantastical elements. When I'm thinking that kind of thing, I'm always thinking steampunky, but I want to take it Asian too. So I said, okay, then I'll do silkpunk instead. And I think one thing about silkpunk, which is a term coined by Ken Liu with the Grayson meetings, I think, is that it's very biological. So that tied in very naturally to the themes of the book anyways. So I don't know, I kind of forgot. It's really long since I wrote this, but I think that's my thing, to be honest.
Any questions? Questions? then I think we can do a.
So in the process of writing a book, would you or have you ever traveled or intentionally interviewed people for a source of inspiration?
That is a great question. So the question is, do you, for the book, did you ever interview someone or travel for the book?
Ooh, accessing the resources behind. I don't think I traveled, mostly because I wrote it during the pandemic and that would have been known back then. In terms of interviewing people, a lot of it was inspired from my parents' journey. I don't know if that counts as interviewing people, but I did ask them a lot of questions about their story. I tried to ask them questions about medicine, but it would inevitably be like, oh, who's the patient? And I'd be like, oh, a theoretical patient. So that didn't really work out well. But no traveling, sparse interviewing. That is usually
But the personal experience through being an interview.
Yeah, it helps to write basically your own story.
Exactly. Any other questions? No? And I guess we can close it out and do the book signing. Which one is that you have to say to the wonderful folks that have come gathered to spend the evening with us?
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I feel like everyone here has been really monumental as beta readers or just general support or, just lovely people in general. So I really appreciate it. Could not have made it here without most of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Applaud for Vanessa for her. Is there something?
Yeah, I'll bring it right up. Yeah, you guys, I have her books for sale, and I think that just again, thank you all so much for coming on book launch day, on Pub Day. It's such an honor to host Vanessa's book launch. So thanks.
Oh, you guys are.
Thank you.
And then we're just going to use the stage as listening, so whoever wants.